There is something you have been overlooking your entire life, not metaphorically, not philosophically, literally. It is sitting in the center of your face, and you have been breathing through it every single second of your existence, and you have never once stopped to watch what it is actually doing. Today you watch, not because someone told you to, not because you read something interesting, because something in you right now recognized the word ready in that title and felt something shift, and that shift, that subtle, almost imperceptible movement in your chest or your gut or somewhere you can't quite name, that is the quantum field already responding to the direction of your attention. You're about to look at something you have been pointed directly at your entire life and never truly seen. Your nose, the breath moving through it, the channel that has been open since the moment you arrived in this world, and will be the last thing to close when you leave it. This is not a biology lesson. This is not a wellness tip. This is an observation. And if you are willing to stay with it, to really look at it, what you find on the other side of this observation will change the way you understand consciousness, healing, and the relationship between your body and the quantum field that surrounds it. Let's begin with something precise, something measurable, something that most people walk past every day because they are too busy reacting to their lives to stop and observe what is actually happening inside them. Right now, as you hear these words, air is moving through your nose, not in and out equally, not symmetrically. At this precise moment, one nostril is doing significantly more of the work than the other. You probably never noticed this. Most people haven't. But your body has been doing something extraordinary with that asymmetry, cycling through it, alternating dominance between left and right, shifting every 90 minutes to 2.5 hours in a rhythm so precise, so consistent, so ancient, that it predates every technology, every civilization, every written record of human consciousness. This rhythm has a name. Scientists call it the nasal cycle, and what it governs, what it is actually doing to your brain, your nervous system, your emotional state, your capacity to heal, is something that the ancient practitioners of pranayama, of yogic breath science, of Taoist internal alchemy, understood thousands of years before neuroscience had the instruments to confirm it. Look closer. What you're going to see as we go deeper into this transmission is not a quirky biological fact. What you're going to see is a doorway, a channel, and that word is not metaphorical, through which something moves that is simultaneously the most ordinary thing in the world and the most extraordinary. Something that connects the physical machinery of your body to the quantum field of possibility that your consciousness inhabits. You have been breathing through this doorway your entire life without knowing what it opens. Today, you learn to watch it. And when you watch it, when you truly observe what is happening in the breath, in the nostril, in the channel between your physical form and the field around you, something changes. Not because you forced it to, not because you performed a technique or followed a protocol, because that is what observation does. That is quantum mechanics. That is the most fundamental law of consciousness interacting with reality. What you observe, you change. And what you have never observed, this channel, this rhythm, this ancient intelligence cycling through the center of your face, has been running your reality without your knowing it. That ends now. Let's look at the science first, because this is not belief. This is measurable. This is documented. This is the kind of precision that should make you stop and recognize that what the ancient traditions were pointing at was not mysticism for its own sake. It was accurate observation of a system so sophisticated that modern neuroscience is only now catching up to what practitioners of breath science knew millennia ago. The nasal cycle. Here's what it actually does. Your two nostrils are not simply parallel passages for air. They are connected to opposite hemispheres of your brain through a mechanism that researchers have spent decades mapping and are still uncovering. When your right nostril is dominant, when it is carrying the majority of airflow, your left brain hemisphere shows increased activity, logical processing, linear thinking, sequential analysis. The hemisphere associated with language, with categorization, with the kind of focused attention that solves problems step by step. When your left nostril is dominant, the opposite occurs. Your right brain hemisphere activates more strongly. Spatial awareness, intuition, pattern recognition. The hemisphere associated with creativity, with emotional processing, with the kind of diffuse attention that allows insight to emerge from the field of possibility rather than being constructed piece by piece. Your nose is not just breathing, your nose is selecting which version of your mind is most active at any given moment. Now watch what happens when you sit with that for a second. You have been walking through your life, through your relationships, through your creative work, through your healing processes, through your moments of crisis and moments of clarity. And the entire time, this ancient mechanism in your face has been quietly, precisely cycling between two fundamentally different modes of consciousness. And you never knew you could watch it. You never knew you could work with it. You never knew that the channel was not just open, it was responsive. It was listening. It was waiting for you to turn your attention toward it. This is where it gets precise. The ancient yogic science of pranayama, specifically the practice called nadi shodhana, which translates to channel clearing or nerve purification, was built on exactly this observation. The practitioners who developed this science were not guessing. They were watching. With the kind of sustained, unflinching attention that most modern humans never apply to their own bodies, they observe the relationship between breath and consciousness, between nostril dominance and mental state, between the rhythm of the nasal cycle and the state of what they called prana, the life force, the animating energy, the quantum field of vitality that moves through and around the body. They mapped it with extraordinary precision. They identified two primary channels, nadis, that correspond to the two nostrils. The right nostril was associated with what they called pingala, the solar channel, active, warm, energizing, outward moving. The left nostril was associated with Ida, the lunar channel, receptive, cool, calming, inward moving. And at the center, where the two channels meet and interweave, they identified Sushumna, the central channel through which, when both sides are balanced and clear, something extraordinary becomes possible. A state of consciousness they described as the gateway to healing, to expanded awareness, to the direct experience of the field of pure potential that underlies all physical reality. That is not mythology. That is a precise observational map of what neuroscience is now confirming. That balanced bilateral breathing, equal airflow through both nostrils, creates a state of whole brain coherence, a state in which the analytical and the intuitive, the active and the receptive, the focused and the diffuse are simultaneously available, a state that researchers studying healing, peak performance, and altered consciousness have identified as the optimal neurological condition for the body's own repair mechanisms to activate. If this is landing for you, if something in you is already shifting just from hearing this, like this video and subscribe to this channel, because every transmission here is an invitation to see something you have been walking past your entire life. Let's go deeper into what you're actually seeing here, because here's what no one tells you about the nose and healing. Here is the layer underneath the biology, underneath the neuroscience, underneath even the ancient channel maps. Healing, real healing, the kind that happens not just in the body, but in the pattern, in the field, in the quantum structure of how your reality is organized. Healing requires a specific quality of attention, not effort, not force, not the grinding, pushing, fixing energy that most people bring to their pain and their illness and their stuck places. A different quality entirely. Receptive awareness. The willingness to be with what is without immediately trying to change it. The capacity to observe without immediately reacting. And here is what is extraordinary about the breath through the nose. It is the only autonomic function in your body that is simultaneously involuntary and voluntary. Your heart beats without your permission. Your digestion operates without your instruction. Your immune system deploys its responses without waiting for your conscious direction. But the breath sits at the exact threshold between the voluntary and the involuntary, between the conscious and the unconscious, between what you control and what moves through you. It is the only doorway that goes both ways. And the nose, specifically the nose, not the mouth, is the gateway that your body designed for this threshold. The nose filters. It warms, it humidifies, it detects. It has receptors for olfactory information that connect directly to the limbic system, the most ancient part of your brain, the part that processes emotion, memory, and the fight or flight response that governs whether your body is in a state of protection or a state of healing. There is no other sensory pathway in the human body that has a more direct line to the emotional brain than the nose. Not the eyes, not the ears, not touch. The olfactory nerve is the only sensory nerve that does not route through the thalamus, the brain's central relay station, before reaching the cortex. It goes directly, immediately, without filtering. Which is why a smell can transport you to a memory before you have time to think about it. Which is why certain scents can shift your nervous system state in seconds before your conscious mind has processed anything at all. Your nose is a direct channel to the part of your brain that determines whether you are in a state that allows healing or a state that prevents it. Watch what happens in your body when you hear this. Because if you have been living in chronic stress, if your nervous system has been running on high alert, cycling through threat responses, keeping your body in the biochemical state of emergency that modern life constantly triggers, then your breath has been shallow and it has been predominantly through your mouth, and the nasal channel has been partially bypassed. And with it, the ancient intelligence that the channel carries. This is not a judgment, this is an observation. And the observation is this: the very thing your body needs most. The activation of the parasympathetic nervous system, the shift from fight or flight to rest and repair, the neurological state in which the immune system can do its work, in which inflammation can resolve, in which the body's extraordinary self-healing intelligence can operate. That shift is accessible through the nose, through the breath, through the channel that has been waiting for your attention. Not through effort, through observation. Let me show you something. Let me tell you about a man named Elias. Elias was a builder. Not a builder of houses, though he had done that too. A builder of systems. He spent his life constructing plans, constructing arguments, constructing defenses, constructing the careful architecture of a self that could handle anything. He was proud of this. He believed that the ability to build, to control, to engineer outcomes was the highest expression of human intelligence. And then his body started to fall apart. It did not fall apart dramatically. It did not announce itself with a crisis. It fell apart the way a building falls apart when the foundation has been quietly crumbling for years, slowly, then all at once. First, it was fatigue that no amount of sleep could touch. Then it was pain that moved through his joints like weather, unpredictable and relentless. Then it was the fog, the cognitive fog that settled over his mind like a permanent overcast, dimming the sharp clarity he had always relied on. Elias did what builders do. He researched, he consulted experts, he constructed a protocol, supplements, dietary changes, sleep optimization, exercise regimens. He built a system for healing the way he had built everything else in his life, through analysis, through effort, through the application of force and will to a problem that needed to be solved. And nothing changed. Not because the information was wrong, not because the protocols were flawed, but because Elias was trying to fix something he had never actually looked at. He was applying solutions to a surface he had never examined. He was building on a foundation he had never observed. One night, unable to sleep, Elias sat in the dark of his kitchen and did something he had never done before. He stopped. Not strategically, not as part of a protocol. He simply ran out of the energy required to keep doing, and he stopped. And in the stopping, in the absolute exhaustion of the builder who has run out of materials and plans and motivation, he noticed something. He noticed his breath, not as a technique, not as something to optimize. He noticed it the way you notice something that has been there all along but that you somehow never saw. He noticed that it was shallow, that it was tight, that it was moving through his mouth in short, clipped cycles that felt like someone was rationing air to a space that needed more. And then he noticed something else. He noticed that one nostril, the left one, felt almost completely blocked. Had been blocked, he realized, for as long as he could remember. He had simply never paid attention to it. He tilted his head. He pressed gently on the right side of his nose. He breathed slowly through the left nostril, and something happened that he could not explain and did not try to. He felt something release. Not in his nose, somewhere deeper. Somewhere he had no name for. A tension he had not known was there because it had been there so long it had become the background of everything. It released. Just slightly. Just enough. And Elias sat in the dark and breathed, and for the first time in years he was not building anything. He was watching. He was simply watching the breath move through the channel, watching the sensation of air against the inside of his nostril, watching the subtle shift in his chest as something that had been braced for impact slowly, tentatively, began to let go. He did not heal that night. Healing is not a single event. But something began that night that had not been able to begin before. Because for the first time, Elias was observing instead of constructing. He was watching instead of fixing. He was present to what was actually happening inside him instead of imposing a plan on top of it. And what was actually happening inside him, the intelligence that had been waiting for exactly this quality of attention, began to move. What did Elias notice that you have also been carrying without knowing it? Drop it in the comments, not what you think you should have noticed. What you actually felt when you stopped, even for a moment, and let the breath be seen. Here's the layer underneath that. What Elias discovered without knowing the science of it is something that researchers studying the autonomic nervous system have documented with increasing precision. The left nostril breath, slow, deliberate inhalation through the left nostril, activates the parasympathetic nervous system more strongly than almost any other simple intervention available to a human being. It is not complicated. It does not require equipment. It does not require training or credentials or a particular belief system. It requires only the willingness to stop, to observe, and to breathe through a channel that is already there, already open, already connected to the ancient intelligence of your body's healing system, the parasympathetic nervous system. Let's look at this precisely because this is where the quantum mechanics of healing becomes visible. Your nervous system has two primary modes. You know them as fight or flight and rest and digest, though the reality is considerably more nuanced than that binary suggests. In the sympathetic mode, the activated, alert, threat-responsive mode, your body is brilliant at one thing: survival in the immediate moment. Blood rushes to the muscles, digestion pauses, immune function downregulates, inflammatory responses activate. Your entire biochemistry reorganizes around the single priority of dealing with the immediate threat. This is extraordinary. This is one of the most sophisticated survival mechanisms in the known biological world. And it is absolutely incompatible with healing. Not because healing is not important, because healing requires resources. Metabolic resources, cellular resources, immunological resources that the sympathetic nervous system has redirected away from repair and toward immediate survival. You cannot be in emergency mode and healing mode simultaneously. The body does not have the bandwidth. The quantum field of your biology does not allow two fundamentally contradictory priorities to operate at full capacity at the same time. And here is the observation that should stop you. Modern human life has created a condition in which the sympathetic nervous system is chronically, persistently low-grade activated, not by physical threats, by cognitive threats. By the relentless stream of information, obligation, social comparison, financial pressure, relationship complexity, existential uncertainty, all of it processed by a nervous system that was designed for acute, short-term threats that resolve quickly, not for the ambient, pervasive, never quite resolved stress of contemporary existence. Most people are living in a body that is perpetually in a mild state of emergency, and in that state, the body's healing intelligence, which is profound, which is extraordinary, which has capabilities that dwarf anything modern medicine has yet synthesized, cannot fully operate. The breath through the nose is the switch, not metaphorically, physiologically. The nasal breath, slow, deliberate, conscious nasal breathing, activates the vagus nerve more effectively than almost any other voluntary action available to a human being. And the vagus nerve is the primary pathway of the parasympathetic nervous system. It is the channel And again, this word is not metaphorical, through which the signal of safety travels from the brain to every organ in the body, through which the instruction to shift from protection to repair is transmitted, through which the body's healing intelligence receives the permission it has been waiting for. Your nose is the switch for your body's healing system, and you have been breathing through your mouth. Pause here. This is not a thought exercise. This is an observation. I want you to do something right now, not later, not when you have more time or more quiet or more of whatever you think you need. Right now. Close your mouth. If it is already closed, notice that it is closed. Bring your attention to your nostrils, not to your breath as a concept, but to the actual physical sensation of air moving through the nostrils. The slight coolness on the inhalation, the subtle warmth on the exhalation, the way the air moves against the inner walls of the nasal passage, the turbinates, those delicate scroll-shaped bones that filter and condition and slow the breath before it reaches your lungs. Now notice which nostril is more open right now. Don't try to change it, just observe it. Which side is carrying more air? Which side feels more clear, more open, more spacious? And which side feels slightly more restricted, slightly more effortful, slightly more closed? Just watch. Don't interpret it yet. Don't assign meaning to it. Don't try to fix it or balance it or do anything with the information. Just observe. Just see what is actually there. Now notice what happens in your body as you give this quality of attention to the breath. Notice if anything shifts. Notice if anything releases. Notice if the quality of your awareness changes even slightly as you move from thinking about breathing to actually observing the breath. That shift you may be feeling, that subtle settling, that slight slowing, that almost imperceptible increase in the sense of space in your chest, that is the parasympathetic nervous system beginning to activate. Not because you forced it to, not because you performed a technique, because you observed, because you brought conscious attention to a process that was previously running outside your awareness, and the act of observation itself, the act of truly seeing what is happening, began to change it. That's not belief, that's quantum mechanics. Now let's go deeper. Because what we have looked at so far, the nasal cycle, the brain hemispheres, the autonomic nervous system, is the surface layer, the visible architecture, and the visible architecture is real, and it is important, and it is worth understanding. But there is a layer underneath it that is more precise, more profound, and more directly relevant to what the title of this transmission promised you. The healing energy that moves through the nasal channel. Let's look at this carefully. Let's look at it without flinching and without the kind of defensive dismissal that the rational mind reaches for when it encounters something it cannot immediately categorize. Prana, chi, ki, pneuma, ruach. The life force has been called by hundreds of names in hundreds of traditions across the entire span of human civilization. And the consistent, cross-cultural, multi-millennial observation of practitioners who studied it carefully is this. It moves with the breath, not as a metaphor, not as a spiritual concept layered onto the breath for symbolic purposes. It moves with the breath the way electricity moves with current. The breath is the carrier wave. The nostril is the channel. And the quality of the breath, its depth, its rhythm, its conscious direction, determines the quality of the energy that moves through the channel. Modern science does not yet have instruments sensitive enough to measure prana directly. This is not evidence that it does not exist. It is evidence of the current limits of our measurement technology. We did not have instruments to measure electromagnetic fields before we had instruments to measure electromagnetic fields. We did not have instruments to measure quantum entanglement before we had instruments to measure quantum entanglement. The history of science is the history of instruments catching up to observations that practitioners had already made. What we can measure is what prana does, and what we can measure is extraordinary. Researchers studying the effects of pranayama, the systematic, conscious direction of breath through specific nasal channels, have documented changes in heart rate variability that indicate profound nervous system regulation, changes in cortisol levels that indicate reduced stress response, changes in inflammatory markers that indicate a shift from the biochemistry of threat to the biochemistry of repair, changes in brainwave patterns that indicate states of coherence associated with healing, creativity, and what researchers studying consciousness call non-ordinary states. States in which the usual boundaries of self-concept become permeable, in which insight becomes available that was not accessible in ordinary cognitive modes. These are not small effects. These are not the marginal benefits of relaxation. These are measurable, documented, reproducible shifts in the fundamental chemistry and neurology of a human being, produced by the deliberate, conscious direction of breath through the nasal channel. And here's what makes this quantum in the most precise sense of that word. Quantum mechanics, the actual science, not the metaphor, tells us that the observer is not separate from what is observed, that the act of observation is not a passive reception of information about a fixed reality, but an active participation in the collapse of possibility into specific form, that what you observe, you change, not because you are powerful in some mystical sense, but because consciousness and matter are not as separate as classical physics assumed. Because the boundary between the observer and the observed is not fixed, because attention is not neutral. When you bring conscious, sustained, precise attention to the breath moving through your nose, when you truly observe the channel, the sensation, the rhythm, the subtle asymmetry, the quality of the air, you are not just passively noticing something that was already happening. You are participating in it. You are changing its pattern by the act of observing it. You are collapsing the quantum probability field of your own physiology into a more coherent, more organized, more healing-oriented form. This is what the ancient practitioners were doing. Not performing rituals, not following rules, observing. With extraordinary precision and sustained attention, they were observing the breath, the channel, the energy that moved through it. And by observing it, they were changing it. They were participating in the quantum field of their own biology in a way that produced measurable, reproducible, documentable healing effects. And you can do this right now. With the nose you have been breathing through your entire life without truly watching. Let me show you something else. Let me take you deeper into the channel map because this is where the precision becomes almost startling. The ancient practitioners of Ayurveda, the Indian system of medicine, that is the oldest continuously practiced medical tradition in the world, developed what they called Swara Yoga. Swara meaning sound or breath or the flow of breath. Yoga meaning union or the practice of conscious connection. Swara Yoga is the science of the nasal cycle as a map of consciousness, health, and the optimal timing of human activity. According to this system, the nasal cycle is not random. It is not simply a biological maintenance rhythm. It is a precise clock that governs the optimal timing of different types of activity, different types of healing, different types of consciousness. The right nostril dominant period, the solar Pingala phase, is optimal for physical activity, for eating, for analytical work, for external engagement with the world. The left nostril dominant period, the lunar Ida phase, is optimal for rest, for creative work, for emotional processing, for healing, for turning the attention inward. And the transitional moments, the brief periods when neither nostril is clearly dominant, when the breath is flowing relatively equally through both sides. Those moments, according to the Swara tradition, are the moments of Sushumna activation, the moments when the central channel is open, the moments when the ordinary boundaries of consciousness become permeable, the moments when healing that is not possible in either the purely active or the purely receptive state becomes available. Modern neuroscience, studying the nasal cycle, has found something that rhymes with this ancient map with almost uncomfortable precision. The transitional moments of the nasal cycle, the periods of relative bilateral symmetry between left and right nostril dominance, are associated with states of whole brain coherence, states in which the default mode network, the brain's system for self-referential processing, for narrative identity, for the story of who you are, becomes quieter. States in which the boundaries between self and other, between body and environment, between the individual and the field, become less rigidly defined. These are the states in which healing happens most readily, not because the body works harder in these states, because the body works more intelligently, because the interference pattern of chronic stress and self-protective tension is momentarily reduced, and the body's own extraordinary intelligence, which knows precisely what needs to be repaired and precisely how to repair it, can operate without obstruction. Your nose knows when these moments are. Your body is tracking this cycle with a precision that your conscious mind cannot match. And the simple act of bringing your attention to the breath, of observing which nostril is dominant, of noticing the quality of the airflow, of becoming a conscious witness to the channel that has been operating outside your awareness, begins to bring you into conscious relationship with this ancient intelligence. Has there been a moment in your life when you saw something clearly about yourself, about a pattern, about a story you had been telling, and the simple act of seeing it dissolved its power over you? Tell me what that was in the comments, because the collective field of observation that builds in this space is itself a force. Here's what no one tells you about the nose and healing. The olfactory system, the smell system, is not just a sensory system, it is a healing system. It is an immune system. It is a consciousness system. And it has been so severely understimulated in modern life that most people are operating with a healing channel that is not just underused. It is functionally dormant. Think about how you live. You live in spaces that smell like cleaning products and synthetic fragrances and recycled air. You breathe through your mouth when you exercise. You take antihistamines that reduce nasal inflammation, but also reduce the sensitivity of the olfactory epithelium, the tissue that lines the nasal cavity and contains the receptors that detect smell. You spend the majority of your time indoors, away from the complex, information-rich olfactory environment of the natural world. And in doing so, you have been gradually, without noticing it, closing down a channel that your nervous system depends on for regulation, for immunity, for the direct experience of connection to the living world around you. The olfactory system is the only sensory system that has a direct, unmediated connection to the hippocampus, the brain structure responsible for memory consolidation and spatial navigation, and to the amygdala, the brain structure that processes emotional significance and governs the threat response. This means that smell is not just a sensory experience, it is a direct interface between the external environment and the emotional and memory systems that determine your psychological state. When you breathe deeply through your nose in a natural environment, in a forest, in a garden, near the ocean, in any space where the air carries the complex chemical signatures of living systems, you are receiving information through the olfactory channel that directly regulates your nervous system, your immune function, and your emotional state. This is documented. The volatile organic compounds released by trees, phytoncides, have been shown to increase natural killer cell activity, reduce cortisol, lower blood pressure, and improve mood in ways that persist for days after a single exposure. Not because of any mystical mechanism, because the olfactory channel is a direct pathway from the living intelligence of the natural world to the healing intelligence of your body. Your nose is an antenna, and you have been keeping it mostly closed. Look closer, because here is the observation that matters most, and it is the one that most people will rush past because it is too simple to seem significant. The healing energy that moves through the nasal channel is not something exotic. It is not something you need to acquire or develop or earn. It is not a power that belongs to special people or trained practitioners or those with particular spiritual gifts. It is the life force itself, the animating intelligence that is already moving through you, that has been moving through you since your first breath, that will move through you until your last. It is not separate from you. It is not something you channel from outside yourself. It is what you are at the most fundamental level. It is the field of consciousness that animates your biology. And the reason it is not healing what needs to be healed in you, the reason the body's extraordinary self-repair intelligence is not operating at its full capacity, is not because the energy is absent. It is because the channel is not clear, because the breath is not conscious, because the attention has never been brought to the gateway through which the life force moves. You were not ready to see this before, not because you lacked intelligence or capacity or spiritual development, because readiness is not about those things. Readiness is about attention. Readiness is about the willingness to look at what has been there all along. And you are here, you are watching, you are ready. Let's go deeper into the practice, because understanding is not enough. Understanding is the map. The territory is the actual breath, the actual observation, the actual practice of bringing conscious attention to the channel that is already there. There is a practice that has been used for thousands of years in cultures that had no contact with each other, in traditions that developed independently across the full span of human civilization. It is called alternate nostril breathing, Nadi Shodhana in Sanskrit, Anulom Vilom in the Ayurvedic tradition. Variants of it appear in Taoist breathwork, in certain indigenous healing traditions, in the contemplative practices of multiple lineages that arrived at it through direct observation rather than shared instruction. This convergence is not coincidence. It is the signature of something that works. When independent observers across millennia and across continents arrive at the same practice through direct observation of the same phenomenon, you are looking at something real. Here is the practice, and I want you to understand before I describe it that the description is not the practice. The practice is the doing. The practice is the observation. The practice is the bringing of your attention to the channel and staying there, watching for long enough that the watching itself becomes the transformation. Sit in a way that allows your spine to be relatively upright without strain, not rigid, not forced, simply upright enough that the breath can move freely through the nasal passages without compression. Bring your right hand to your face. Place your right thumb lightly against the right nostril, not pressing it closed yet, just resting there. Place your right ring finger lightly against the left nostril, again, just resting. Let your index and middle fingers rest on the space between your eyebrows. This is not arbitrary. The third eye point, the Ajna chakra, sits precisely here. The pineal gland sits directly behind this point, and the pineal gland, which produces melatonin and regulates circadian rhythms, is also implicated in the production of DMT and in the neurological correlates of states of expanded consciousness. The pressure of the fingers here is subtle, but it is not without effect. Close your eyes, take one complete breath through both nostrils. A slow, full inhalation and a slow, complete exhalation. Let this breath be a signal to your nervous system that something is shifting, that you are moving from doing to observing, from reacting to witnessing. Now gently close the right nostril with your right thumb. Inhale slowly through the left nostril, slowly. Not a gasp, not a rushed intake of air. A slow, steady, conscious inhalation through the left nostril, the lunar channel, the Ida Nadi, the channel connected to the right hemisphere of your brain and to the parasympathetic nervous system. Count 4 beats if counting helps you slow down, or simply let the inhalation last as long as it lasts when you are not rushing it. At the top of the inhalation, pause, just for a moment, not a held breath in the sense of straining or forcing, a pause, a moment of fullness, a moment of being completely full of breath, completely present, before the exhalation begins. Now release the right nostril, close the left nostril with your ring finger. Exhale slowly through the right nostril, all the way out. Let the exhalation be longer than the inhalation if it wants to be. Let the body release what it has been holding. At the bottom of the exhalation, pause, a moment of emptiness, a moment of having released everything before the next inhalation begins. Now inhale through the right nostril. The solar channel, the Pingala Nadi, the channel connected to the left hemisphere and to the activating, energizing aspect of the nervous system. Pause at the top, close the right nostril, exhale through the left nostril, pause at the bottom. That is one complete cycle. Do it again, and again, and again, without rushing, without forcing, without trying to achieve anything other than the precise, conscious observation of breath moving through the channel. Notice what happens. Not what you think should happen, not what you have read should happen. What actually happens in your body, in your nervous system, in the quality of your awareness as you continue this practice. Most people within 3 to 5 minutes of this practice begin to notice something. A settling, a quieting, not the absence of thought. Thoughts continue, but a change in the relationship to thought, a slight increase in the sense of space between thoughts, a subtle shift in the quality of awareness from reactive to observational. This is the beginning of the observer state. This is the beginning of the shift from the person who is being run by their nervous system to the person who is watching their nervous system. And from that watching, from that shift in position from participant to observer, everything becomes possible that was not possible before. Because here is the quantum truth of it. The moment you become the observer of your own nervous system, your own breath, your own channel, the moment you step back from being the one who is breathing and become the one who is watching the breathing, you have changed your relationship to the entire system. You are no longer inside the pattern. You are watching the pattern. And what you watch, you change. The nervous system that was running the show without your awareness, the one that was keeping you in low-grade emergency mode, that was keeping the healing intelligence offline, that was keeping the channel partially closed. That nervous system begins to respond to the quality of your attention. Not because you commanded it to, because observation is not neutral, because consciousness is not a passive witness to a fixed reality, because you are a quantum observer and the field of your own biology collapses into more coherent, more healing-oriented form in the presence of your clear, sustained, compassionate attention. That's not belief. That's quantum mechanics. Let me tell you about Mira. Mira was a healer, not by profession, by nature. She was the person in every room who sensed what others were feeling before they said it. The person who knew when someone needed to be held and when they needed to be given space. The person whose presence seemed to make difficult things slightly more bearable. She had spent her entire adult life channeling this gift outward, toward her patients, her clients, her family, her community. She gave with extraordinary generosity and almost no awareness of what she was giving from. And then she got sick, not dramatically, chronically. The way healers often get sick when they have been giving without receiving, channeling without replenishing, attending to everyone else's channels while their own remain unexamined. She was exhausted in a way that sleep could not touch. She had recurring respiratory infections, always in the upper respiratory tract, always the nose, always the sinuses. She had lost almost entirely her sense of smell. She had not noticed this happening gradually, but when it was pointed out to her, she realized she had been living in a sensory world that had become muted, flattened, stripped of the olfactory richness that she had once taken for granted. And with the loss of smell had come something else, something more subtle and more significant. A loss of the quality of presence that had always been her gift. A loss of the direct, immediate, almost physical sense of connection to the people and places around her. She was still there. She was still functioning. But something had gone quiet. Something had dimmed. She went to a practitioner of Ayurvedic medicine who looked at her carefully, not just at her symptoms, but at her. Who asked not just what hurt, but what she had stopped doing, what she had stopped noticing, what channels she had stopped tending. And the practitioner said something that Mira did not expect. She said, "Your nose is grieving." Not metaphorically, the practitioner meant it precisely. The olfactory system, the smell system, is the system most directly connected to emotional memory, to the sense of connection, to the direct experience of presence. And when a person has been living in a state of chronic depletion, giving more than they are receiving, channeling energy outward with no attention to the channel itself, the olfactory system is often the first to shut down. Not as a failure, as a protection, as the body's way of saying, you cannot keep receiving the world at this depth of sensitivity without also receiving care for yourself. Mira's nose had shut down because Mira had stopped receiving. She had stopped being the observer of her own experience and had become entirely consumed by the experience of others. The practitioner gave her a practice, not a complicated one, not an elaborate protocol, a simple daily practice of nasal breathing, of alternate nostril breathing, of sitting quietly for 20 minutes each morning with her attention on the breath moving through her own channel, of being, for that time, not the healer, but the one being healed. Not the one giving attention, but the one receiving it, from herself, from her own witnessing awareness, from the simple, profound act of watching the breath move through the channel with the same quality of attention she had always given to others. Within 3 weeks, her sense of smell began to return. Not all at once, in fragments. A flower in a garden that she had walked past daily without noticing suddenly stopped her in her tracks. The smell of rain on dry earth that she had not consciously experienced in years. The smell of her own kitchen in the morning, rich and warm and specific and hers. And with the smell came the presence, the quality of connection, the direct, immediate, almost physical sense of being in contact with the living world around her. She had not healed by trying to heal. She had healed by watching, by bringing the quality of attention she had always given to others to the channel within herself, by becoming the observer of her own breath, her own body, her own channel, and what she had been avoiding looking at. The depletion, the giving without receiving, the channel that had been running dry while she kept drawing from it. That, finally seen, began to transform. Here is what that reveals. The nasal channel is not just a physical structure, it is a metaphor made physical. And I want to be precise about what I mean by that, because I'm not using metaphor loosely. I am using it in the way the deepest traditions always used metaphor, as a precise description of a correspondence between the physical and the non-physical that is so exact, so consistent, so reproducible, that it functions as a map. The channel in your nose corresponds to the channel in your life. The quality of your breath corresponds to the quality of your reception, of life, of energy, of information, of healing. The degree to which the nasal passage is open or restricted corresponds, with remarkable consistency, to the degree to which you are open or restricted in your capacity to receive. Not in a vague, feel-good way, in a measurable, physiological way. Chronic nasal congestion, the kind that results from chronic low-grade inflammation, from chronic stress, from the biochemistry of a nervous system that has been in protective mode for too long. Chronic nasal congestion is both a symptom of restriction and a cause of it. It reduces the quality of the breath, which reduces the activation of the parasympathetic nervous system, which maintains the stress response, which maintains the inflammation, which maintains the congestion. It is a closed loop, a self-reinforcing pattern, a quantum system that has collapsed into a specific, restricted form and is maintaining that form because nothing has introduced a new observation, a new quality of attention, to interrupt the pattern. You are that new observation. The moment you bring conscious, sustained, compassionate attention to the breath moving through your nose, the moment you become the observer of the channel instead of simply the one being moved through it, you introduce a new variable into the system. You introduce the quantum observer, and the system begins to reorganize around the clarity of your attention. This is not instant. This is not magic in the sense of something that bypasses the real. This is magic in the deepest sense. The application of consciousness to matter in a way that produces change that cannot be fully explained by the mechanical laws of classical physics. The application of observation to a quantum system in a way that collapses possibility into a more coherent, more healing-oriented form. Let's go deeper into what you're actually seeing here, because there is one more layer, and it is the layer that everything else has been pointing toward. The breath through the nose is not just a biological process. It is a practice of presence, and presence, real presence. The kind that is not a performance or a technique, but an actual quality of being. Presence is the most healing force available to a human being. Not the presence of other people, though that matters. Your own presence, your own capacity to be fully here, fully in contact with what is actually happening in your body, in your breath, in the channel through which the life force moves. Your own capacity to be the observer of your own experience rather than being swept along by it. This is what the quantum observer effect is pointing at when you look at it closely enough. Not just that observation changes the observed, but that the observer, the one who is watching, is changed by the act of watching. That the capacity to observe clearly, to see without flinching, to be present with what is actually there rather than what you wish were there or fear is there. That capacity is itself a healing force, that it reorganizes not just the thing being observed, but the one who is observing. When you sit with your breath, with the channel, with the ancient intelligence of the nasal cycle, when you bring your full, clear, sustained attention to what is actually happening in the most intimate territory of your own physiology, you are not just practicing a technique. You are practicing being present. You are practicing the observer state. You are practicing the most fundamental act of consciousness, the act of seeing clearly without flinching, without immediately trying to fix or change or improve what you see. And in that practice, something happens that no protocol, no supplement, no external intervention can produce. The body's own intelligence, which has been waiting with extraordinary patience for exactly this quality of attention, begins to move, begins to repair, begins to organize itself around the clarity of your observation rather than the confusion of your avoidance. This is what it means for your nose to be ready to channel healing energy. Not that some external force is going to flow through you if you perform the right ritual. Not that you have achieved some level of spiritual development that unlocks a special capacity, but that you, right now in this moment, with the nose you have, with the breath you have, with the channel that has been open your entire life, you are ready to become the conscious observer of the channel that has been running your biology without your awareness. You are ready to stop breathing on autopilot and start watching the breath. You are ready to stop being moved through the channel and start being present to it. You are ready to bring the quality of attention that transforms what it touches to the most intimate, most constant, most overlooked process in your body. You are ready to watch, and what you watch, you change. Now let's do the second practice, the deeper one. the one that takes what we have been building toward and brings it all the way into the body. Find a position that is comfortable for you. Lying down is fine. Sitting is fine. What matters is that you are not doing anything else. Not driving, not managing anything, just being here with the breath, with the channel, with the observation. Close your eyes, take 3 slow breaths through your nose. Not controlled, not performed, just slow. Let the breath find its own depth. Let the body breathe itself while you watch. Now bring your attention to the inside of your nose, not to the idea of your nose, to the actual physical sensation of air moving through the nasal passages, the texture of it, the temperature, the way it moves against the inner walls of the nostril on the inhalation, and the way it changes on the exhalation. Slightly warmer, slightly slower, carrying with it the moisture and warmth of the body's interior. Watch this. Just watch it, without trying to change it or improve it or deepen it or do anything with it. Just observe the breath moving through the channel. Now, as you watch, begin to notice the quality of the breath. Is it smooth or slightly rough? Is it even or slightly uneven? Is there any place in the nasal passage where the air seems to catch or narrow or move with more effort than elsewhere? Don't try to fix what you notice. Just see it. Just bring the light of your awareness to it, the way you would bring a lamp into a dark room, not to rearrange the furniture, but simply to see what is there. Now, gently, without forcing, begin to let the inhalation lengthen. Not by effort, by invitation. As if you are inviting the breath to go slightly deeper, to fill slightly more fully, to reach slightly further into the body. Let the belly soften on the inhalation. Let the ribs expand, let the breath fill the body from the bottom up, the way water fills a vessel. And on the exhalation, let it be complete. Let it release all the way. Let the belly fall. Let the ribs release. Let the body empty itself fully before the next inhalation begins. And in the pause between the exhalation and the next inhalation, that moment of emptiness, that moment of having released everything, rest there for just a moment. Don't rush to the next breath. Let the body call for the breath. Let the breath arrive when it is needed, not before. This pause, this moment of emptiness between breaths, is the Sushumna moment, the moment of the central channel, the moment when neither solar nor lunar is dominant, when the breath is not coming in and not going out, when the body is in a state of complete balance between activation and receptivity. This is the moment the ancient practitioners identified as the gateway, the moment of maximum healing potential. The moment when the quantum field of your biology is most open to reorganization. Rest there. Just for a moment, just long enough to feel it. Now, as you continue to breathe, begin to add an intention, not a demand, not a visualization of a specific outcome, an intention, which is a different thing entirely. An intention is a direction given to the field, a quality of attention that opens towards something without grasping for it. The intention is simply this: healing. Not healing of any specific thing, not healing according to any particular plan. Simply the quality of healing, the quality of the body's own intelligence operating freely without the interference of chronic stress and self-protective tension, without the obstruction of a channel that has been running on autopilot. With each inhalation through the nose, receive. Receive the breath, receive the prana, receive the life force that is moving through the channel with every breath you take. not as a performance, as an actual felt quality of reception, as the willingness to take in what is being offered. With each exhalation, release. Release what is not needed. Release the accumulated tension of a nervous system that has been in protective mode. Release the patterns that have been running without your awareness. Release the things you have been holding because you were afraid to let them go. And in the pause, rest in the observer. Rest in the one who watches, the one who is neither inhaling nor exhaling, neither receiving nor releasing, but simply present, simply here, simply watching. Stay here as long as you are called to stay. There is no correct duration. There is only the quality of your presence and the willingness to remain in it. When you are ready, let your eyes open slowly. Let the ordinary world return gradually. Don't rush back into thinking. Let the quality of the observer state linger. Let it color the next few minutes of your experience. Let it remind you that this is always available, this quality of presence, this depth of observation, this channel that has been open your entire life. Because it is always available, the breath is always there, the channel is always open. The observer is always present underneath and behind and within every experience you have ever had. You have simply not been watching it. Now you are watching. And here is what that changes, not in theory, not eventually. Right now, in the quality of your awareness, in the quality of your relationship to your own body, in the quality of your capacity to receive what your body's intelligence is trying to offer you. The moment you become the observer of the breath, you step out of the automatic, reactive, unexamined pattern of breathing that has been running your nervous system. You step into the conscious, intentional, present relationship with the channel that changes everything it touches. You become, in the most precise quantum sense, the observer who collapses the field of possibility into a more coherent, more healing-oriented form. You were never just a body moving through the world. You were never just a nervous system reacting to stimuli. You were always the observer, the one who watches, the one whose attention shapes what it touches, the one whose presence in the field of their own experience changes that field in ways that no external intervention can replicate. You just forgot to watch. And the nose, this overlooked, underestimated, perpetually present channel in the center of your face, has been waiting patiently for you to remember. Has been cycling through its ancient rhythm, left and right, and left again, solar and lunar, and the brief, extraordinary moment of balance between them. Has been filtering and warming and conditioning the breath, has been connecting the external world to the emotional brain, has been carrying the life force into the body with every single breath, for every single moment of your existence, waiting for you to watch. Something in you knew this. Something in you recognized the word ready and felt a shift. Not because someone told you something new, because something old, something ancient, something that has been cycling through you since your first breath, was finally being seen. Drop what you observed in the comments below, not what you think you should have observed, what you actually noticed when you brought your attention to the breath, to the channel, to the quality of the air moving through your nose. One word or one sentence or as much as you need, because what you share here becomes part of the field, the collective observation of everyone who has watched this transmission and turned their attention, perhaps for the first time, to the channel that has been running their biology without their awareness. Type this if it landed for you. I see the channel now. And what I see, I change. Because that is not a belief, that is the most fundamental law of quantum reality, applied to the most intimate territory of your own body. What you observe, you change. What you see clearly, you transform. What you have been avoiding looking at has been controlling you, and the moment you look, the moment you truly, clearly, unflinchingly see, it begins to reorganize around your clarity. Your nose is not just a nose, your breath is not just breath. The channel through the center of your face is not just anatomy, it is the threshold between the voluntary and the involuntary, between the conscious and the unconscious, between the self that reacts and the self that observes, between the pattern that runs you and the awareness that sees the pattern. And the moment you watch it, the moment you bring the quality of attention that transforms what it touches to this most ordinary, most constant, most overlooked process in your body, you step into the most powerful position available to a human being. Not the position of control, the position of clarity, not the one who forces healing, the one who watches healing happen, because the body's intelligence has finally been given the quality of attention it needs to do what it has always known how to do. You are not here to fix your body. You are here to watch it transform the moment you stop looking away. The channel is open. It has always been open. The breath is moving through it right now as you hear these words, carrying with it the life force that animates everything you are. The nasal cycle is doing its ancient work, shifting left and right, solar and lunar, activation and receptivity, in a rhythm that your body has maintained with extraordinary precision since the moment you arrived in this world. All of it has been happening without your awareness. All of it has been running the show. And now you are watching. Now you are the observer. The one who sees clearly, the one whose attention changes what it touches, the one who does not fix, does not force, does not perform, but watches with the kind of unflinching, compassionate, precise clarity that is the only force that transforms without resistance. If this transmission reached you, if something in you shifted or settled or saw something it had not seen before, then share it, not as a recommendation, as an offering, because someone in your life is breathing through a partially closed channel right now, in a body that is waiting for the quality of attention that would allow it to heal, and they do not know that the doorway is in their face. They do not know that the channel has been open their entire life. Sharing this is not simply passing along a video, it is giving someone else permission to look at what they have been avoiding. It is extending the field of observation into their experience. And when two people are watching the same thing clearly, the clarity amplifies for both. That is not metaphor, that is how collective observation works. And if the noise of the day has settled where you are, or if you find yourself reacting instead of watching in some future moment, come back to this. Watch it again from stillness. The channel will show you something different the second time, because you will be a different observer. And if you want to go deeper, if you want to keep watching, keep observing, keep bringing the quality of attention that transforms what it touches to the territory of your own consciousness and your own body, then stay in this field, subscribe, return. Because every transmission here is an invitation to look at something you have been avoiding, to see it clearly and to discover that the moment you do, it cannot remain what it was. You were never meant to look away. The observer is the most powerful position in the universe, not because it controls, because it sees clearly, And clarity is the only force that transforms without resistance. What you watch, you change. What you avoid, controls you. Your nose has been ready. The channel has been open. The breath has been moving through it every moment of your life, carrying the life force, carrying the ancient intelligence, carrying the possibility of healing that your body has been holding in reserve, waiting for the moment you are willing to watch. That moment is now. Now you see, and what has been seen cannot be unseen.